These are your people, Madam Speaker. Hi, everyone. I'm not Robert Costa, and I apologize for that. I'm Katie Couric, and I was thrilled to pitch it for Robert, who couldn't make it tonight, because, I mean, it's such a privilege whenever I get a chance to have a conversation with Nancy Pelosi. We spoke a few months ago on my podcast about her memoir. It's not a memoir, her new book, The Art of Power. And of course, we're gonna talk about a lot of things tonight. In fact, I thought I'd start by asking you, who's gonna win the election, Nancy? Just kidding. I am gonna get to that momentarily, but first we're gonna talk about this wonderful book, The Art of Power. You have had such a, may I call you Nancy first and foremost? I don't want people to think I'm being disrespectful. Yes, you may call me Katie. You have had such a fascinating life. As you've said, quote, housewife to House member to House Speaker. But that is not the story, Nancy, you chose to tell in this book. Why is that?
Well, first, may I just say how much fun it is to be here with all of you. What an honor it is to be here with Katie. NY92, what a place. Jody, thank you for your kind introduction. Jody, as you know, she was a leader in dance, and I do believe that you cannot dance too much, so maybe we'll resort to that tonight. But it's always a pleasure to be here. This is a great sense of community here tonight, and in that spirit, I look forward to our conversation. The question that you asked about the book is that I actually was just setting the record straight from my perspective on 4 things, 2 domestic and 2 foreign, 2 global. And I was writing the story about Affordable Care Act and then the TARP domestically and China policy and the Iraq War, which I was in very grave disagreement with President Bush on that, but we are friends otherwise. So I wanted to write about those 4 things. But I didn't have time when I was speaker to do that, so I did it after, and they said, well, you can't have a book and not talk about the years with, you know, what's his name, and you have to talk about January 6th, and you have to talk about what is happening now, but you also have to talk about what happened to your husband. And so it's sort of a, I want you to know I was in the room when it happened on these other things, and this is my story on but how I saw it, and then some more current things. But there was so many other things I wanted to write about, the greatness of my members, their courage, and the rest of that, and that remains for another book and some other issues. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So you.
Don't worry about that. I'm from San Francisco. I'm used to this.
We have an opportunity for the audience to ask questions, so we'll wait till the end of our conversation to do that.
See, they'll get what they want because all the press will say is that we got interrupted.
All right, so you never know what to expect at the 92nd Street Y. I'll wait a second to continue.
Let's bow our heads for the hostages and be prayerful about the hostages, which they never mention. So,
Gosh, there's so many things up.
I love you too.
There are so many things to talk about, and we will talk about the Middle East in a little bit. But I thought it was interesting that you told me when I interviewed you a few months ago that, and you just said it now, that you will still write a memoir. So I just want to ask, woman, where do you get your energy? And can I have some of that? I mean, honestly, you are indefatigable.
Yeah, well, I'm Italian American, and that gives me a lot of energy. I eat a lot of very dark chocolate, and that gives me. And the one thing I don't have enough of are hours in the day. I keep thinking, why don't we have more hours in the day to get more things done? I think having 5 children in 6 years and 7 days
prepared you.
I keep saying that so that my archbishop hears that. But it is, you're so multitasked that you get a lot done. You know?
Well, you're really remarkable. I know this book is the first time, Nancy, you talked about the brutal attack on your husband, Paul, on October 28th. It will be 2 years.
2 years coming up.
I can't imagine actually how horrifying that was. Tell us about when you found out and sort of that sequence of events, if you could.
Thank you for asking, and thank you. I mean, he was so overwhelmed by so many messages of support and love and prayer and comfort and the rest. The thing was that he and I have never actually had the conversation, and I say in the book that what I know about what happened is what was testified in court.
Because he's never talked to you really, or your family.
Well, the doctors have said it's not a good thing to keep revisiting from a trauma standpoint, but also when he's ready to do that, then I think he thinks it would be very painful for us. And I hope this is useful to you to hear this, because political violence has no place in our country. And to have someone invade the sanctity of your home, where is Nancy, where is Nancy, we're echoing what was January 6th in the Capitol, where is Nancy, where is Nancy, and then to have my husband pay a price for my, shall we say, activism, and I mean, it's horrible, and he's coming along fine. He's about 80% there, and he's wonderful, and we're prayerful, but it is, the importance of it is that this has to stop. And what was sad about, in addition to the trauma of, we have children and grandchildren, and this happened to their pop, who's such a lovely person. He's not even that political.
I'm not married to Paul Pelosi, but he is one of the nicest kindest, most handsome man. and he's the loveliest person.
He's very kind. In fact, many of the Republicans have expressed their kind words to me because they know him as, a friendly, nice person. But nonetheless, imagine that this would happen in your family. Someone would invade your home, attack your spouse, all the rest of that, your children all concerned. We don't know if he's going to live or die or the rest of that. And at that very same time, the former president of the United States, his children, the governor of Virginia, Elon Musk, people like that making a joke of it. What does that say about them? To the contrary, when the president was assaulted, we were sympathetic and prayerful and the rest, because that's appropriate. But for them to think that was really funny was really hard to explain to our children and our grandchildren.
In fact, you write in the book, Nancy, quote, "It was beyond offensive to hear high-profile Republicans make cruel jokes and misrepresentations about the attempt on Paul's life from the former president and his children to governors, party leaders, and other high-ranking Republicans and Republican candidates looking to score cheap points as they joked about sending me back to San Francisco.
Yeah, but the other part of it is the earlier attacks on me from the Republicans, and this is important, I think, for us, and then we can move on, is that all the things the Republicans were demonizing me. They had me with horns and cloven feet and burning in hell and awful and misrepresentations and all that. And that contributed to the attitude that came into my home that night. So we all have to, make sure we understand that if all people know about government and politics is that kind of advertising in politics, we do a real disservice to democracy. But again, it has no place, and especially when I've been trying to urge many, many more women to run for office. This is not that helpful. When I went to Congress, there were, as you know, there are 435 members of Congress. There were 23 women, 12 Democrats, 11 Republicans. As the former chair of the California Democratic Party, I said, no, we are making a decision. In this Congress, we have 94 women. The Republicans have 30-some. They've grown too, but we certainly want more. But our caucus is 70% women, people of color, LGBTQ. And that's a real, very different from when I went to Congress.
Even before the attack on your husband, so much rage felt by some on the right in recent years has been disproportionately focused on you. Yeah. The Washington Post wrote, for a wide swath of Republicans, Pelosi is enemy number one, a target of the collective rage, conspiratorial thinking, and overt misogyny that have marked the party's hard right turn in recent years. I'm curious, as you see this, and I don't know how much you're aware of, or if you're able to tune it out, how do you process or attempt to make sense of this rage? To what degree is it rooted in misogyny? And in some ways, do you think they are perversely intimidated by your power?
Yeah, well, I think this, and this is going to, let me put up a self-promotion sign here. Self-promotion is a terrible thing, but somebody has to do it. And I think that they have to come after me because I was a masterful legislator, a proud and effective politician, a historic fundraiser. So they had to, if I were not effective, they wouldn't be paying attention to me. And that's really what I tell the women, and that is to say that we have to calibrate as we go along and be prepared, especially to prepare family, because it's hurtful to families to hear all of those things. But no, I think that we won the House. We won 94, 96, 98, 2000, 2000. I said, you know what? I'm tired of losing. I know how to win. And just in terms of what's happening now, I said to these people, don't vote for me because I'm a woman, my colleagues, and don't vote against me because I'm a woman. Just listen to what I have to say about policy and politics and how we can win this place back after having been in the minority for such a long time. And I'm so proud of Kamala Harris because she's putting her ideas, her vision for the future, her new way forward. She is a woman. That's self-evident. But if you only had one thing to say to someone about why you should be reelected, it's really got to be about them and their hopes, dreams, and aspirations, not because you're a woman. And it's going to be the most thrilling thing. I get emotional about thinking about a woman president of the United States. And Jody said that I'm the most, woman politician in the history of the United States. I only have 12 more days and that will be over, and I'm really looking forward to that till Kamala is president and Tim Walz is vice president of the United States.
Well, Nancy, I have to ask you about the polls. It is neck and neck in so many swing states. I believe the latest polls show Donald Trump 1 point ahead in the national race. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot the messenger. But how confident are you, truly?
Oh, that's in. Okay.
That's it.
I'm traveling all over, and I'm very, very encouraged. Here's what I think, and here's what I'm asking you to do. I believe that the victory is there. We just have to turn out the vote. Now, again, I speak like a former party chair. We have to own the ground. We have to mobilize every voter to make sure that everybody votes, because I don't know about those polls, but I do know what I see out there. And I know the power of the women's health issue. I know the power of the saving the planet. I know the power of the gun violence protection. I know that she will win this if we turn out the vote. So I have 3 M's: mobilization, own the ground. I don't really see that much on their part in terms of their getting out the vote.
The ground game is much better by the Harris team. I think everyone agrees with that.
No, and it's for that. It's also for the House. Hakeem Jeffries must be the Speaker of the House. So I'm doing Harris-Walzer, but I'm doing the House too, and I think that we have a good prospect for Chuck Schumer to be the majority leader of the United States Senate as well, in the Senate. But okay, so then I have my 3 M's: message, mobilization, then message. Let's have a message that is progressive and bold, but not menacing. We can have a strong message that isn't turning people off. The governor of Michigan invited me there. I went to speak there, and I said to them, what works in Michigan for a message about working families works in San Francisco. What works in San Francisco might not work in Michigan. We must carry Michigan. We must have a consensus for our country. What is our purpose is to win for the people. So that message has to be something that is a plus and serves us well after the election to unify the country. And then the third is the money, and she's doing ragingly well with that. But right now, it's just about the mobilization. So if any of you, some people say, I have my fingers crossed, uncross them and get on the phone and call people, text people, knock on doors, write those postcards, because I have 3 no's. We can't have any wasted time. We have no underutilized resources and no regrets the day after the election. If only we had each done 1 more precinct. And so this is within our grasp. A lot riding on it, and we all have a responsibility to make it happen. I don't know about the credibility of the polls or this or that, but I do know that there is, let me just give you an example. 2 years ago, in 2022, you remember they said Democrats are going to lose 30 or 40 seats in the House. There was a red wave coming. I knew it wasn't true. And what we did was we went out there with women's health issue, Roe v. Wade and that, and gun violence protection, and save the planet and democracy, and compared and contrasted with the incumbent who voted a certain way. So we didn't lose 30 or 40, we lost 5 here. We're going to win them back here. New York's going to, and Hakeem will be the speaker. Now, I say that is because then they, remember, going up to the election, we're going to lose 34 seats. It didn't happen. So, but at the time they said, she, meaning me, is really going to owe the Democrats an apology because she keeps putting forth this Roe v. Wade message. And it's in the rearview mirror. People have moved on from that. No, they haven't. They haven't moved on from their own physical health. And so we really had that in the forefront. And I'm telling you, it is out there major. And just to tell you why it's so important for us to win, after Dobbs, we had in the House, it was 2 years ago, we were still in the majority, and we put forth a bill to enshrine Roe v. Wade in the law of the land. And of course, no Republicans voted for it. Okay, that's what they believe. We couldn't get it through the Senate because 60 votes and all that. But in the House, that's what we did. So after that, I said to the members, I'm going to put something on the floor that says this. Kathy Manning of North Carolina, she's a wonderful member, she had a resolution that said, women have a right to contraception. The members said, don't do that, they'll vote for it. People will forget what they did about Roe. I know the territory, okay? Put it on the floor. We had the votes to win it, so we had our 2 whatever. 203 Republicans voted for it. 8 of them voted that women have a right to contraception. 195 of them voted that women do not have a right to contraception. Does that tell you what you need to know about who you want to have the majority in the House of Representatives? I don't even know if they need a lesson in the birds and the bees or if they even know what's going on in their own homes. 8, 195. Tell that to your friends who might say, I'm not sure where I am. Well, this is where they are. And so this is big. You're going to see not a gender gap, you're going to see a gender gulf in this election if people persist, some men persist in not voting.
I wanted to ask you about the gender gap. Obviously, Kamala Harris is doing much, much better with women, but the Democrats seem to have a man problem, particularly men of color, Black men and Latino men seem to be breaking a little more than previously for Donald Trump. Can you explain that?
Well, you've seen some explanations of whether that is even a fact.
Right.
Isn't a fact.
Or if it's been overstated.
Yeah, and they keep playing that song. But in my travels, I talk to the young African-American, both electeds and those who aspire to, and they say they're going to have a big young black vote coming out for Kamala Harris. Now, in the past, some older black men had told me when Hillary ran, they weren't ready for a woman to be commander-in-chief. And that was then. I think we've come a long way since then. But you know, winning election is a decision. We don't agonize about who might not be coming out. We organize about those that we have to get out. And so it's a campaign. It's a war term, a battle term. It's a campaign. So again, all right, if that's where they may be. Now you see Barack Obama. Was he not absolutely fabulous in Detroit and Wisconsin and the rest? And he has a message there as well. But again, you can't be held up about who might not be coming out when we know we have a tremendous resource of other people to win. It's not to diminish their importance. It's just to get a drumbeat going that they see. I think minority people are vote like their generation more, as well as their ethnicity. And so I think young people will overwhelmingly be voting for Kamala.
You mentioned Barack Obama. He did get some criticism for what he said privately about black voters, kind of wagging his finger, sort of saying, shame on you. And Dasha Burns, who's a young NBC correspondent who's been covering the Trump campaign, I asked her, what are people out at these Trump rallies saying? Why are they supporting Donald Trump? And she said, I'm hearing from a lot of people, they're tired of the lefty lecture culture. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious about your take. I know you've had your differences with some more progressive members mm-hmm. of Congress and had disagreements. Do you think the Democratic Party needs to kind of rethink or reorient its ethos or its language or its mission away from this kind of lefty lecture culture that Dasha was talking about?
Well, I wouldn't predicate my future of the party on some analysis of some report of somebody saying that they're tired of the lefty. We're not lecturing. We're fighting for America's working families. Now, presentation is everything. If they want to criticize Barack Obama, he's worth a statement, right? We're so glad he said what he said. And again, I'm not hearing that from young people saying, oh, I was offended by what that was. No, we'll say that when we appeal to them, it's not good enough just to say, well, so-and-so's a sports figure and he supports this Democrat or whatever. You have to, I'm supporting that person because what it means to young people and their future. It's not just about, it's not a condescension to say, okay, I'm a star, so you should vote for her because I'm voting for her. No, you have to say, I'm voting for her. I remember being young, what it took to do this, that, and that. You have to relate it to them. And so I say to them, it's not condescending to you to just say a star wants you to vote for her. It's to get your attention, to vote. And let me tell you why I am voting for her. But everybody who says anything is criticized. And so you can't pull your punch. And I'm so proud that the president didn't. But whatever they thought, overwhelmingly, it was very well received.
Let me ask you about sexism. And I'm curious, you know, as a very powerful woman who, wow, you've seen it all.
Yeah.
You say we've come a long way since 2016. Personally, I worry about an undercurrent of sexism and misogyny that still exists in this culture, with people not even recognizing their own implicit bias and coming up with a whole host of reasons not to elect the first female president. Is that something you worry about?
Well, let me first just say, as I said before, when I ran for leadership, it was in this century, and it was in this century. So what I'm saying to you is recent. It was recent, and when it was like the early 2000s, and they said, "Who said she could run?" Imagine. I was like, light my fire, why don't you? You think I'm waiting around for you to say that I can run? And then they said things like, well, you know, everybody's been, there's a pecking order here, and members have been waiting for openings to occur, and so then they are all in line for whatever the next opening is. Really? They have a pecking order, and they're waiting in line? And, well, we're breaking in the line because we've been waiting over 200 years. And that was in the past 20 years. And so then they would say things, well, if women want more power, why don't you just make a list of the things you want and we'll do them for you? Poor babies. And so no, we don't have a glass ceiling in the Congress. We have a marble ceiling in the Congress. And I think that we have to be thinking marble, too, in the country, because a glass ceiling is a lot easier to break than a marble ceiling. But I do think that Kamala Harris is not going out there and saying, we need to have first woman president, as I said before. She is our nominee for the party, not because she's a woman, but because she's the best person for the job. And that is what we are conveying to people. And sometimes people say to me, oh, well, some liberals think she's not progressive enough. I only have 2 words to say to you as a progressive from San Francisco. 2 words: Donald Trump. Donald Trump. So this, now, just in terms of being sympathetic to everyone in their vote. They're, a 30% or something like that are never going to vote for a woman or person of color or an immigrant. It just ain't going to happen. That's just whatever it is, the insecurity or the whatever it is, we never can get their vote. And then you have very rich people, billionaires, who really, I don't know what they pledge allegiance to, but it seems like the only thing that they have an oath to is their tax return. They just don't want to pay their fair share, and they don't want to pay, some of them don't even pay their taxes. There aren't that many of them to make a difference in an election, except tons of money, which makes a difference in an election. So you got the very rich who don't want to pay taxes and do not want any protections, any regulations on anything, clean air, clean water, whatever it is. I don't know if their children don't breathe air or drink water, but whatever it is, climate, cost of prescription drugs, gun violence protection. And then you have other people who sincerely are concerned about the changes in the economy and what that means to them. And that is globalization. There was a factory down the road and now it's gone. We lost jobs. Innovation. My father used to be a truck driver and now they're having driverless trucks. All those kinds of things. And they are legitimate concerns that people have about their livelihood and the livelihood of their children. And when President Biden had his first 2 years with us with the majority, all the legislation we passed was to make sure that people understood the path was there for them. That whether it was the rescue package, which, so many jobs created in the rest, infrastructure, bipartisan infrastructure bill, the CHIPS Act, the PACT Act for our veterans, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which reduced the cost of prescription drugs in particular, for seniors on Medicare and the rest of that, but we have to do more. And so it was to say in the CHIPS Act, you can, these are new things, you can have your path. Even if you're not going to college, the trades are needed. Everything we do, we need a plumber, we need a carpenter, we need an electrician, we need people to establish so that others can do whatever the research is, or perhaps you'll do the research. So when we're talking about the future, we have to show people what is in it for them to thrive in the new realities. Innovation is inevitable. Globalization is somewhat inevitable, not as much as innovation, but people have to know how they can participate and do very well in it. And that is the glory of Joe Biden. That is his legacy. He was fabulous, but people don't know.
Well, why doesn't that seem to be sinking in to the millions and millions of people who seem to see Donald Trump as a vessel for their anger and resentment? They are angry about grocery store prices. They're angry about gas prices, about housing prices. And I think theoretically, maybe these things will improve their lives at some point. But in the here and now, they are just pissed off.
Yeah, and President, let the record show I'm quoting a Republican president. President Lincoln said that public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. But for public sentiment to prevail, people have to know. And if you're willing to say anything, a snake oil salesman really, to the public, promise this, that, and the other thing, and misrepresent it, there's a market for it. Like there's a market for saying that Haitians who are here illegally are eating dogs and cats. There's a market for that. There's a market for the vulgarity that you have seen with him. There's a market for that, and he knows that, and that's why he repeats those things. Sometimes it normalizes some of their own attitudes. But that does not take away the fact that we have to make sure people know, that they know, because what's important about them knowing is not just our popularity. What's more important than that is they're accessing the opportunity that is there for them. And it is, it will take, as it's going to happen. You know, the Republicans, we only had 13 on the bill, the infrastructure bill, which is so fabulous, and about bringing the people together, community. Community has the word unity in it, so building unity in our country. 13 of them voted for the bill. The rest of them voted no and took the Joe. They just go to every groundbreaking, every ribbon cutting, like they were right there for the whole thing when they had said before it was, you know, a big loser. So again, it's about messaging, and that's why I say elections are a decision. You make a decision to win, and then you make every decision in favor of winning. Are you going to own the ground with your mobilization? Are you going to message with unity and bringing people together? Are you going to have enough money to get the job done? And then it's a question. Those are 3 legs to a stool, the platform on which the candidate stands. And I think the decision to have Kamala Harris be the nominee for the party is a winning decision for our country.
I have to ask you about Donald Trump, because in the book you write, I knew Donald Trump's mental imbalance. I had seen it up close.
Yeah.
With President Biden out of the race, there is more focus now on President Trump's mental and physical fitness for office. For someone who has spent, as someone who's spent quite a bit of time around him, what is your take on the bizarro behavior of late, you know, turning his campaign rally into a 39-minute DJ set, talking about Arnold Palmer's junk, sorry. I mean, honestly, it's sort of like, and yet, nothing seems to be, I mean, he himself said he could go on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and nobody would care. But, I think Teflon presidency was first used for Ronald Reagan. But have you ever seen such a Teflon candidate? And what do you make of his really erratic, strange behavior of late?
Well, let me just say, in terms of him, there's a picture that people keep asking me to sign of me pointing to him in the Roosevelt room. It's not the cabinet room, it's the Roosevelt room. And they're all his, it was a security meeting, so it's all his people there, national security people around the table, and us, and then on our side, the Democrats and Republicans from the Congress. And the reason I'm pointing to him is I had really had it. You know, I know Kamala says, I've prosecuted people like him, I know people like him. No, I know him. And what he was saying at the table was so appalling. It was so appalling. So I'm saying to him, look, Mr. President, I'm leaving. I've had it. Because with you, all roads lead to Putin. There's something weird about him and Putin. And it's, I don't know, but in any event, how he was criticizing disgracefully General Mattis and anybody, he was already gone. The words of the, you know, in other words, there are all kinds of things to say about him, and I think that he's not on the level. That's what I think. But I'm not a doctor, and I'm not analyzing him. I'm just saying his behavior, screaming, tantrums, terrible. Anyway, when John Kelly, a four-star general, Marine, head of the Marines, he was the chief of staff to the president, longest-serving chief of staff to President Trump. When he took the job, I called him. I said, look, I don't even know what I called him anymore because he was secretary of HHS, and now he's, you know. I said, I don't like the company you keep, but I do want you to know I'll be there as a resource to help in any way I can to get the job done for the American people. And he said, I want you to know this. I took an oath to the Constitution of the United States, not to any one man. So we will find our common ground. He wasn't criticizing Trump at the time, not at all. He was just declaring where he was from. So when you see what he is saying now, it is completely consistent with his honoring his oath of office to the Constitution of the United States. And he has said, he's acting as if he is a fascist. But
well, General Milley said he was fascist to the core.
Yeah.
John Kelly has made comments, about how, didn't he say he wanted his generals to be more like Hitler's?
Yeah.
General Mattis has agreed with all those people. Donald Trump has recently said they're enemies within and has threatened to turn the military on people who oppose him. I mean, it's on and on and on.
Well, I hear my grandbaby, the voice of the future in the audience.
I was wondering, I was like, who is that?
Let's talk about the future. But let me just say this in terms of that situation. Sometimes people say to me on my travels, why do you think democracy is at stake on the ballot? So well, let us review what democracy is. Democracy, the fundamental of democracy, free and fair elections, and peaceful transfer of power. Not a monarch, peaceful transfer of power. Independence of the judiciary, very fundamental. We make judgments about other countries if they do not have an independent judiciary. Respect for freedom of speech. He has said if he doesn't agree with what we say, we will be prosecuted if it's criticizing him and he doesn't like that. I mean, really? And so that list goes on in terms of what democracy means to people personally, choices that you make in your life, getting back to size, timing, and if you have a family. So democracy is about freedom for individuals. It's a very personal thing as well as an institutional thing about the courts and the elections and the rest of that. And that is all at stake in this election, proudly expanded by them that they're going to be doing away with it. And you see the rogue court. What more do you need to know than about the Supreme Court already? So understand this, when you vote in an election for president or Senate, you're voting for the Supreme Court. Understand that. So it is, it's not, I mean, he's vulgar and grotesque and all the rest of that. But what's really more important is the policy that we're talking about. 2025 formula that eliminates the Department of Education. You know what that means to poorer kids in economically disadvantaged areas? You know what that means to them in terms of their possible future and the rest? It's stunning. And as you say, why are people, well, some people, I don't know, but I'll close with this on this subject. I believe in the goodness of the American people. I believe that at the end of the day, and the end of the day is coming soon, in a matter of a week and a half or almost 2 weeks now, at the end of the day, the goodness of the American people will say, we want somebody, the president, who respects the office she is running for, who honors her oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, who has strength to be the commander-in-chief, and that respect that is, the European, other people are so frightened about what the consequence would be if she does not win this election. So this is, and what the model that democracy is to the world. They saw January 6th. He said it was a day of love. What kind of love is that? And we saw it. We saw the violence. We saw the intention. We saw people, over 100 law enforcement people getting injured, some of them dying. We saw that they were out to get me of the bullet in my head and a noose for the vice president. When they told the president that the vice president was under siege, he said, so what? So I think prayerfully, but I grew up in a political family and we were told, don't pray for the results of an election. You pray for people's health and you pray that God's will be done. But I'm very prayerful anyway that the goodness of the American, I believe, I have faith in the goodness of the American people. And that gives me hope. It's right in the middle of faith and charity, hope. Again, we got to own the ground and mobilize to make it happen. But there is so much, the reputation of the United States of America. And remember this, on January 6th, after all was said and done, and they were defecating on the floor and awful, and overwhelmingly the Republicans voted not to accept the results of the Electoral College, led by their leadership. That's why Hakeem Jeff, we will win the House. You have not. Take that home. We will win the House. But, and Hakeem will have that gavel on January 6th, just as it was important for me to have it then, but let's talk about the future, important for him to have it there, so that he can take, that they said to me before, why don't you just have the members come to an undisclosed location and vote on it? I said, you know what? We're going to the floor of the House where they came in. We're going to show that we prevailed, that they failed, and that we are going to accept the results of the vote of the American people in front of the American people and in front of the world, that our democracy has prevailed. It's essential that Hakeem be there to do that, but I don't think we'll have, that the federal government has declared that day as a special national security event. They have that designation for certain events, and they have labeled that. So there will be security there to prevent something similar than what the President of the United States inciting an insurrection against the Capitol, against the Congress, against the Constitution of the United States. So again, I believe that the American people, deep in their hearts, apart from those who make a pledge to their tax return, deep in their hearts, will vote for Kamala Harris or not vote for Donald Trump.
What else, not to be a buzzkill, but what else do you worry about, Nancy? Like when you're tossing and turning and anxiety-ridden like many of us are right now, what most concerns you? You mentioned eradicating the Department of Education. Project 2025 is a 900-page document full of all sorts of things. But when you project the possibility, as hard as it might be, of 4 years of Donald Trump, what frightens you the most about him assuming the office of the presidency again?
Well, I don't really even like to talk about it, but let me just say this. He said about our NATO allies that he's not even sure that we should honor Article 5, our mutual deterrence, our mutual defense agreement in NATO, the greatest national security institution in the history of the world. He also said that if some of those people don't pay as much for their of their national budget on defense, his pal, Putin, can have at them. Members of NATO, he can have at them. So what's war, as our friends have indicated, and I agree, war is a terrible thing. It's a horrible thing. But global security is a responsibility that America has taken. And what worries me is not just the destruction domestically. We can deal with that because Hakeem will be Speaker of the House, and that is essential. But the global aspects of it are something that have the world concerned. Telling Zelensky that he started the war in Ukraine. I mean, I'm telling you, this is not a brain that is on the level. I'm not a doctor, I don't analyze, but I can make a judgment about people's statements. So what bothers me is what it means globally, because I know that's why we won in 18. We went in there and had a big victory in 2018 to stop him from his nonsense. He only accomplished one thing when he had the majority in that first 2 years, a tax bill that gave 83% of the benefits to the top 1%. The top 1%. 83% to the top 1% at the expense of everything else. $2 trillion to the national debt. Mr. Fiscal Responsibility. $2 trillion to the national debt. And so that's what he says he's going to do again when he wins. So that's why it's really important for us to have that check. And really, it's going very well for us across the country. American people have to speak. But in terms of globally, there are things a president can do without the Congress, and that is, but let me have just one thing. I don't agonize. We're just organized. It isn't a question of, oh my God, what are we going to do? No, let's just do it. Let's just do it.
Nancy, you talk about sort of your concern about global affairs. I know a number of American Jews who feel that Donald Trump would stand behind Israel in a much more palpable, stronger way than Kamala Harris. And I would love for you to weigh in on that assessment.
I think they're Republicans, and that's a rationalization. I think that Joe Biden has been Israel's true friend for his entire political career in the Senate, as vice president, as president of the United States. Israel is our friend in terms of values. It's in our national security interest to be supportive of Israel. Israel was attacked by a terrorist organization that his purpose is to eliminate the state of Israel. And these folks don't seem to see the balance and all that. It has a right to defend itself. But there has to be some proportionality in the rest there in terms of collateral damage for civilians in that kind of a situation. And so you see the unease there. But I don't think anybody should have any concern, unless it's another part of their agenda, that they don't want to pay taxes and they also are Republicans. And so they say, oh, well, because the support for Israel has been bipartisan all along. Barack Obama did more than what's his name could even think about doing to help Israel when it comes to the intelligence sharing and the support for newer, fresher weaponry to protect Israel.
Do you worry that that will hurt Kamala Harris among some young progressive voters, as well as a sizable Muslim population in Michigan?
Well, it is an issue. There's no question about it. I keep saying to the Muslims, what about the Muslim ban? This man didn't even want you in the country. They didn't want you in the country. One of the first things he did as president was to have a Muslim ban. We all rushed to the airports. We all rushed to every place to identify with him. We had because we were in the minority, we had hearings. We had hundreds of people come, 1,000 State Department officials signing a letter saying this is wrong. The military showing up. We cannot abandon those who helped us in war. The evangelicals saying to us, America's asylum initiative is the crown jewel of American humanitarianism in opposition to the the Muslim ban. So there's so many things, and Joe Biden has been for a two-state solution. All of us have been for a two-state solution. Not Netanyahu, but the rest of us have been for decades, for some of the agreements in the Clinton administration and the rest. So yeah, I mean, this is most unfortunate what is happening, and the use of force is, I think we ought to have another conversation. John F. Kennedy, when he was president, spoke at American University and talked about war no more. And you see that it is not a civilized way to resolve conflict. But there has to be a two-state solution. It has to be where each country, the Palestinians and Israel can have security and freedom and self-determination and the rest. This cannot persist this way. But those folks that come in, they're just criticizing Israel, and there's basis for the lack of proportionality. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. But so I think there are conversations with some of those people in Michigan to just put it in a fuller context. Some of them are voted uncommitted in the election before. Hopefully they will weigh the equity that is there, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, and know. Do you know what will happen to the Palestinians if he becomes president? I mean, he's talking about like getting rid of them all and building a beachfront or something. He has no sympathy for their faith, their aspirations, and the rest of that. And many of us, I'll just tell you this little story because I have an orientation that you should know. I don't even know if it's in the book. When I was born, my father was a member of Congress, and then he became mayor of Baltimore. And when I was in first grade, he became the mayor, and I went away to college. He was still mayor. But earlier in his career, when he was a boy, when he was a teenager, he was a Shabbat goy. That meant he went on the holy day, whatever it is, and lit the fire. So he learned Yiddish. Thomas D'Alessandro, his name, didn't speak Italian. His mother was born in Baltimore, but he spoke Yiddish. So when he was running for first House of Delegates and then City Council, then Congress, they were speaking Yiddish. So, and he was very close to the Jewish community. So they had him making speeches at pageants, they called them pageants, rallies, parades, and he was a great orator. Couldn't read a speech to save his life, but a great orator. He could turn around an unfriendly crowd in a second. He was great.
I think you inherited that from him.
When he went to Congress, he would stand up and say, "Mr. Speaker, I stand here as a representative of the Hebrew Men's Army," whatever that might have been at the time. And one of his speeches, and this is my point, one of his speeches was early March 1943. He went to the floor of the House. Now, understand this. He's one of the earliest Italians. I don't think there were two handfuls of Italians who'd ever been elected to Congress. So here he is, an Italian-American in the Congress, worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt. Worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt, except on two things. And he went on the floor of the House because he was concerned about the fact that the administration was not paying attention to what was happening to Jewish people in Europe, and that they were not moving quickly enough to help establish a Jewish state in Palestine. Those two things. That was his thing. And that was a disagreement with the administration, which he worshipped. Goes to the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, and it's a matter of record, his speech. He talks about the fact that people in Europe, Jewish people in Europe, were being killed just because of what they believed. And so far, we have a record of 2 million people who have been killed, murdered for what they believe. And this information is in the archives of the State Department and well known to the administration. Oh my gosh, that was like bombastic at the time that he would make that accusation. So when I talk to, Netanyahu or people like that, I say, you don't guard the gate to Israel and support for Israel for me. Well, for many of us, we have our own reasons why we love Israel and why we're concerned about the cost this is to Israel and other parts of the world. But this is a values debate, and she has been very clear that she's a friend of Israel, but that doesn't mean there aren't solutions in the interest of Israel to be there. And I say to them, Donald Trump, you want Donald Trump to be president of the United States? Who could want that?
We have time for just 2 audience questions. You talked about your dad, so I feel like we need to give your mom a little love up here. Someone said, I read about your mother keeping a favor file. Is that where you get your savvy from? Tell us a little bit about her.
Well, my mother was wonderful. I was the youngest, 7 children, 6 boys, 1 girl. I was the youngest.
No wonder you're so tough.
And it was actually lovely. But the thing is that she was very well organized, and my father was the politician and the orator and the blah blah blah, and that. And she really did the mobilizing of the volunteers and always entertaining them and this or that. But the favor file, people make it sound like all it meant was. And when I was a girl, I would listen to my mother talk to people and this or that. So I knew when I was like 10, 11 years old how to tell people to get a bed in the city hospital or try to get an apartment in the projects or that kind of thing. I just knew how to tell them where to go to do that. So the favor file was, if you got helped, then you have to help somebody else. It was passing it on. And so people say, well, that was a favor file for politics. No, we were in a very democratic area. There were maybe 2 Republicans who ever voted in that district, and we knew exactly who they were. But and we were all friends. It wasn't any bitterness. We were all friends. But that was, and that's really the way it should be. If you were helped when you needed help, and then you were in a position to be helpful to other people, we're going to give you a call. And that's what that was. But she was quite wonderful,
You're lucky. It sounds like you had 2 fabulous parents.
Yeah. Well, we were born, I grew up in Little Italy in Baltimore. Here we go. Better food than anybody, all right? And what happened was, we were born devoutly Catholic, proud of our Italian-American heritage, fiercely patriotic, loving America, and staunchly democratic. And we saw that as a part of the separation of church and state, but our moral responsibility to do public good.
This is the last question because we're out of time. We've gone over a little bit. I hope that's okay, everyone. Someone from the audience says, and everyone needs to listen to your point about don't agonize, organize, but this person said, I'll be canvassing in Pennsylvania this weekend. What would...
Well, I'm sorry?
She's going to be canvassing in Pennsylvania this weekend. What would your 60-second elevator pitch be to undecided voters? So go, Nancy.
Before I do, I will say, I'll go back to Baltimore for a moment, and then we'll come back to that. Little Italy is near the port, and the port is where the national anthem was written. So we were always raised with all this love of the American flag and our country and the history that we lived near, all that several hundred years, 250 years later, whatever it is. Anyway, so when you go to the game and stuff and you're playing the national anthem that was written in Fort McHenry in Baltimore, when you got to there, it says, land of the free, home of the brave, you start cheering, right? You start cheering. I start cheering sooner. I started cheering sooner, and this is what, when it says, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. To me, that is what is the situation we're in. We have to prove in this election and through the night of it all that our flag and all that it stands for is still there. Remembering that every day in school or academia or whatever, civil official work, we pledge every day to that flag to have liberty and justice for all. And that is all on the ballot right now. We have to prove through the night our flag with liberty and justice for all is still there, honoring the vision of our founders for this great country. Thank God they made the constitutional amendable. Honoring grateful for the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform who fight for our freedom and democracy in the world, and to be worthy of the aspirations of our children, the aspirations of our children. That is what is all there and what the fight is about. So when they go to these places, I'm a kitchen table person. I think they have to go right to the person's kitchen table. Before I say it, just to say, Joe Biden, 16 million jobs formed under his leadership. Other guy, the worst job creation record since Herbert Hoover. 8 women have a right to contraception. 195, no. So there's the fact that they have this impression that because we had global inflation, it was Joe Biden's fault. We came out of it better than any other place. So, okay, so let's take it right to the kitchen table. This election is about you. This election is about you. It's about your freedom, your personal decisions, the education of your children. I mean, really, we hear about books and they want to ban books. Well, we don't have to go too far down the road. We just want to take it to them about job creation, about a new way forward that Kamala Harris has said she's here for America's working families, not for the billionaire class. And that is a big difference between the two. So the distinction between what she will do every day of her presidency, Kamala Harris will go into that Oval Office and say, what are we doing today to lower cost, increase confidence, have better jobs for America's working families? So again, that's too many words. We just go right to the kitchen table and just say, it's about your freedom of choice of who you love and what family you have, and it's about the security of your job. Really, he's going to have a tax? He's going to do all these tariffs? I mean, really? No, but again, I digress. It's about you.
There's so much to say.
No, but you got a mountain of things. You got to have 3. Boom. So it's about you. It's about your personal freedom. It's about our country. It's about your children's future. And it depends on where you are. I mean, some places care enormously about the planet, okay? My grandbaby, 11 months old, will live into the next century. Any of your children or grandchildren under 20 or something, they'll live until the next century. We have to make sure that the planet is sustainable and resilient for them. We have to make sure that the democracy is strong and free for them. They have to make sure that the society is fair and just for them. That is all on the ballot now. So when you're going to, I don't know whether you're going to be in Philadelphia or in our congressional district, so the message but again, just take it all to the kitchen table and listen to them as well. And then just say, you are doing this because you believe she will be there for America's working families. She will be there for lower health care costs, lower prescription drug costs, and the personal freedoms that they need. And those things are like why people vote. Lower prescription. lower prescription drug costs. It's a huge difference at that kitchen table. So I would just repeat the first sentence of the Constitution: "We, the people of the United States, to form a more perfect union, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, promote the justice for all." You know what the Constitution says.
Bring a copy.
Yeah. No, but choose the way you want. Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen.
But I would always say,
wait.
listen first, and then go right to the kitchen table, which we didn't do so much tonight. But I hope you. I'm really so honored that you're all here. 92nd Street Y, we'll say it that way, but 92 is such a fabulous place. It's so unifying. It brings people together to agree or disagree. And when you're talking to those people, they may disagree, but they may respect you for what you are out there trying to convince them to do. But I think mostly you'll be just convincing them to vote, because I'm sure that they have focused the GOTV on the opportunity districts for Kamala. But it's going to be great. It's only 12 more. Was it 12 more days? Is that it? 12 more days.
12 more? Is that
One
right?
good day in front of another. One good day in front of another. Thank you.
Nancy Pelosi, everyone.
That's it for Katie. Katie Couric.